This episode of Bullet Heaven HD was made possible with support from viewers like you. To support our productions, check out the links below. Moss is a company that has done a fairly decent job in keeping the shoot-'em-up genre alive, with most of their games coming to North America. Such titles as Raiden 4 and its later enhanced Overkill version did a fantastic job with the established franchise, and, to a lesser extent, King of Fighters Sky Stage was an interesting, if bizarre, twist on SNK's beloved fighting franchise. Towards the end of the 7th generation of video games in 2013, Moss would also release Caladrius, a Gothic-themed vertical shooter with some rather unique features.
Caladrius was released on Xbox 360 in Japan back in 2013. Later that year, an enhanced version made its way to arcades as Caladrius AC, and again on the PlayStation 3 as Caladrius Blaze in 2014. Finally, the original version saw release to Xbox Games on Demand in North America and Europe in 2015. What makes Caladrius stand out? Let's take a closer look.
To start, players have their choice of one of 3 characters, each with their own unique storylines and special attacks and abilities. There are also a pair of downloadable characters available at the cost of $3 each that grow the roster to a total of 5. That gives players a wide variety of choice to tackle the game.
At a glance, the gameplay in Caladrius is pretty simple. 8-way controls are responsive and sharp, allowing players to move about the screen at a decent rate. With a very small hitbox, avoiding the most dense bullet swarms is a cinch when paired with Caladrius' great input response. Players also have a rapid-fire attack mapped to the A button that does a pretty good job of taking out most smaller enemies rather easily. Beyond these basic controls though, things get pretty interesting.
Players also have an arsenal of alternate offensive magic attacks that are activated with the X and Y buttons. The B button, meanwhile, enables a defensive bullet-canceling ability. All of these abilities will deplete a gauge respective to the one used, and will automatically recharge when not in use. Each gauge is also positioned on the screen relative to their buttons on the controller as well, making things pretty intuitive while they are in use and charging.
If more firepower is needed though, a pair of super techniques are also available to wipe the screen clean in a pinch. A standard bomber is mapped to the right trigger, which acts as you might expect, and ends up being pretty handy in panic situations. However, the left trigger will unleash a massive elemental burst attack that will decimate everything around the player in pretty short order. It will also wipe away enemy bullets, since the barrier attack is also part of it. Using this technique will also reduce your magic attacks to 0, and can only be used when at least 50% of each one is available. In addition, the more your character has been chain-broken, the longer this attack will be.
Caladrius also has a neat way of going about extends as well. Every so often, defeating certain enemies will result in a purple crystal being dropped. When collected, it is set to one of the holes in the center of the bottom of the screen. When they are all filled, a grimoire will appear on the screen which, when it is collected, will grant an extend. Excellent for players that may have a harder time getting their scores up to a point where extends are typically rewarded in these types of games, even though Caladrius comes off as more or less Damaku Light by default. However, there are also bomb extends that are obtained from achieving a higher score, starting at 3 million and continuing every 5 million after that.
Caladrius is played over the course of 5 stages, each with a hulking stage and boss, and even a hidden 6th stage unlocking as certain conditions are met in the game. Bosses have multiple life bars to chew through, resulting in a shame break for the boss in question that will result in bonuses. More on that later. A player can also be shame broken as well, and will become more powerful as a result. Between stages, players can upgrade their elemental shots with ether chips collected by filling the ether gauge and from defeating bosses.
With 2-player co-op, Caladrius is also a pretty decent game to tackle with a friend, especially taking turns with bombs and barriers to shield comrades in arms. Various options also exist to change the difficulty of the game, as well as what side a single player will play on. Like Raiden 3 and 4 as well, the ever-challenging brain-melting duel mode is also present, allowing players to control both ships at once.
With solid gameplay then, most if not all players should be able to pick up and play Caladrius with little to no trouble at all, especially on easy and below. But there are a couple of issues in particular. More than once we found some of our shots were a bit too similar to enemy fire, especially when using Lilith. Enemy shots also have a pretty bad tendency to get lost in the backgrounds, thanks to their very similar color. Their size is typically really tiny too, so for an old fogey like Sarah, it gets really hard to see them, much less avoid them.
Paired with the bullet issues, we also had a little trouble with the character shame break portraits obscuring the screen a little too much, which was a bit irritating. But beyond these hiccups, the gameplay in Caladrius is straightforward, solid, and even, dare we say it, newbie-friendly. Always good. For those looking for a competitive edge though, there are also some decent points to the scoring too. With enemy destruction making up the bulk of one's score in the main game, multipliers are definitely a handy thing. In Caladrius, boosting your multiplier, which starts at 1.00, is as easy as taking out your enemies with elemental attacks rather than your character's main shots. In doing so, your multiplier will climb bit by bit to a higher and higher amount so long as you don't die. Bite it and you're back to square one.
This multiplier can be chained throughout an entire stage, which helps in getting big boss bonuses, but once you've completed the stage in question, the multiplier will return to 1.00 to be built up again on the next stage.
Throughout the stage as well, medals will be dropped from fallen enemies which, while not directly linked to the score in the stage proper, is tallied up at the stage end. As with the multiplier, collected medals are forfeit if the player gets hit.
There are also special mana towers that can be unveiled in many spots in each stage. Similar to soul towers in Xevious, uncovering these towers allow for players to get a score bonus once they are flown over and collected. The amount also seems to be random each time, ranging from 50,000 to 200,000 points each.
During boss fights, getting a shame break versus the boss characters as fast as possible will result in a number of bonus medals. At stage end, the clear time, enemy kill percentage, life remain, remaining bomb stock, ether chips, and collected medals all contribute to an end stage score that can get pretty huge.
In addition, ether chips can also be saved for future stages without being used to upgrade your character's abilities, and can be used to further boost the stage end score. On the whole, the scoring is super straightforward, with the main basic idea being don't die.
私が必ず
With a more or less by-the-books game style and simple scoring on the whole, with very little in the way of twists, Caladrius' presentation needs to carry it quite a ways. Thankfully, it mostly succeeds in this respect.
With the exception of blending bullets, which we talked about earlier, the overall visual design in Caladrius is pretty awesome stuff. Each character's ship has some pretty sweet mechanical design, and the enemies are well thought out and rendered, making for a great visual package on its own. The bosses of each stage are also pretty cool and, once again, very well designed.
Beyond the core graphics in the game, Caladrius also features some really good character design on the whole from manga artist Susuhito Yasuda. His signature style is pretty obvious, as fans of Atlus's Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor can attest. Of course, there is a matter of the shame break art, which depicts the characters in Caladrius losing more and more of their clothing as they lose the lives and health bars. But the North American release is also toned down considerably from its Japanese counterpart. The fact remains though, it's fan service for fan service's sake.
Speaking of toned-down features in North America, the baffling choice to remove the voice acting from Caladrius' numerous story scenes is kind of a bummer. The story arcs are still functional regardless of this, and nothing is missing with respect to the writing. The downloadable characters also have their own arcs, and characters will interact with each other during duel and co-op play. Neat!
The surviving VO and the stages proper are well delivered, albeit in Japanese, and the sound effects for explosions, shots, and special attacks all work brilliantly. In addition, the awesome Gothic rock OST does a fantastic job of keeping up the action on screen with numerous standout pieces. Awesome.
Rounding it all out, achievements for players looking for extra replay value as well as unlockable galleries for the in-game art assets are also available, making for a great overall presentation in the end.
So, just how does Caladrius stack up? Let's take a look. Caladrius' controls are sharp enough to get through with no mess or fuss, but maybe not as precise as other games like Mushihime-sama Futari.
The elemental attack inputs are intuitively placed, making for easy access and understanding of how to use them and what has been used.
Challenge-wise, Caladrius is a game that comes off as very newbie-friendly despite the sometimes tiny, hard-to-see shots.
Experienced players can really ratchet up the difficulty, though.
At just 5 fairly short stages lengthwise, there isn't an especially big amount of game to play, but practice to see the hidden true final boss can boost the replay.
The multiple characters do add replayability as well, as each has their own rather cohesive story.
Visually, cool polygonal ships and stage elements make for a slick overall visual package.
Character design is also a cut above from Suzuhito Yasuda, the same artist behind Durarara and Atlus's Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor series.
Sound-wise, with a super fitting Gothic-style OST, Caladrius has a soundtrack that works exceptionally well for its overall aesthetic.
The lack of VO for its story scenes has us a little miffed though. Regardless, what VO has survived is decent indeed.
In terms of ingenuity, fan service elements notwithstanding, Caladrius does some neat stuff with its extends and elemental attack gameplay features.
But beyond this, Caladrius is very by the books. Even so, it's still got the fun factor you want from a vertical shooting game.
You could do a lot worse with $26 than picking up Caladrius with its 2 DLC characters. For players looking for a game that's light on complexity but heavy on fun, or fan service, Caladrius might just be for you. Caladrius gets a 4 out of 5. You can get Caladrius today on Xbox Games on Demand for just $19.99, with DL characters being $3 each. Physical copies from Japan will go for much more on the whole at auction, and only the PlayStation 3's Caladrius Blaze is region free, so Games on Demand might just be the best way to go about getting one of Moss's more interesting games. In addition, the more your character has been chain broken, the longer this attack will be. Hey!